All right, hi, and welcome everyone to Crafting Your Application. My name is Teresa Stock. I'm one of the career counselors at Roosevelt's Office of Career Development, and I am here along with our graduate associate in career counseling, Elisa. So we are going to be presenting to you today lots of cover letter and resume stuff. And I want to let you know, let me go ahead and advance the slide, that this presentation is actually adapted from the new rules of work. I have the book right here. I definitely recommend you to check out this book. It's all about everything job search. So it's cover letters and resumes, but it's also networking, job search techniques, and all of that stuff as well. So I know sometimes reading that type of information isn't the most exciting content and can feel like it's a little bit dry. But I will say, out of different career books that I've read over the years, that this one is very well written, and it's also written in a very easy to understand way. It's a pretty quick, easy read considering the content. So I definitely encourage you to check out this book for more information. So we're really just going to focus on information from one of the chapters out of this book that really has to do with cover letters and resumes. Please keep in mind too that we will be taking questions throughout the presentation, so feel free to put those in the chat as we go through information. We're going to try our best to keep an eye on the chat, so if we don't get to your question right away, we're not ignoring you. We probably just haven't seen it yet, so keep in mind that we will be getting to all of your questions, and we'll also save some time at the end for you to ask any additional questions as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to be talking about the steps to take to create your resume. So this book really breaks it down into 4 steps for creating your resume and 4 steps for creating your cover letter as well. So step 1 in creating your resume is laying the groundwork. So one important thing that you really want to remember when you are writing your cover letter and resume to apply to jobs is that they should be tailored to the individual position you're applying for. So if you're going to be applying for similar types of positions, you might have one kind of base or foundation resume that you build off of and use it to apply to different types of roles, or use to tailor to when you're applying to different specific individual roles. But for the most part, you always want to remember that you don't necessarily just want to use the same identical resume every time you apply for a job. And of course, this is going to be especially important if you do plan on applying to different types of positions, because you want to make sure that you're really focusing on information that's going to be most relevant and key to the individual position. So when you are laying the groundwork, so this is before you really even start writing your resume, this is kind of the prep work that you're doing beforehand. You want to review the posting for the specific position that you are applying for. I'm personally someone who likes paper. I like to print things out and get my pen to underline things, or get my highlighter out to highlight certain things. You know, if you're not somebody who likes to work that way and you like to do things online or in Microsoft Word, whatever, it's whatever method or strategy works for you. But the overall concept here is that you want to really make sure you're going through the posting with a fine-tooth comb, and that you're noticing and highlighting any key things that are listed in the job description or in the job posting that have to do with the qualifications and what the employer is looking for. So one question that you really want to ask yourself as you're going through the job posting is, am I qualified for this position? You don't necessarily have to meet every last one of the qualifications that they're listing in the posting to apply, because a lot of times employers write a job posting with the ideal candidate in mind. So they realize that not every applicant is necessarily going to have every last requirement or qualification that they're listing. But if you feel like you meet most of the requirements or preferred qualifications, I would say to go ahead and apply for those jobs. Now, if you're looking at a job that requires 10 to 15 years of experience and you are more of an entry-level candidate, or maybe you only have a few years of related experience under your belt, then maybe you want to switch up what the types of positions you're looking for a little bit more, and find something that's going to be a better match for you. But again, keep that in mind. You don't have to meet every last qualification that they're listing, but you do want to meet the majority of them or have related experience. Also, really take note on what the employer is looking for. So that can be when they're talking about the required experience that they're looking for or the skills that they're looking for. Note those key words or skills that are mentioned multiple times throughout the posting. This is going to help you identify keywords and terminology that you should then use when you are writing your resume. So again, get out your highlighter, get out your pen, whatever method you prefer, but really go through that job posting with a fine-tooth comb. Now, next, you also want to write down your own skills and accomplishments. How do they match up to what the employer is looking for? If you are having a hard time identifying your skills or accomplishments, or you want to get ideas from other people who have knowledge of who you are as an employee or as a candidate, take a look. If you have previous work experience, take a look back at some of your old performance reviews. What types of skills or accomplishments have your supervisors mentioned in the past? That's all information that you can possibly use when you are crafting your resume. Also, just general feedback that you've gotten, maybe from your instructors, professors, supervisors, coworkers. If you have volunteer experience, your supervisor at your volunteer site. Think about feedback that you've received from others on things that you've done really well. Again, this can give you some insight as to skills or information that you can include then on your resume. You also want to make sure that you focus on accomplishments that you have that are tangible or quantifiable. So really thinking about that in terms of, if you helped improve, let's, for example, say customer service, can you say by what percentage you helped increase customer service or something along those lines? So anytime that you can be a little bit more detailed and give numbers when you're describing your skills and accomplishments, that can be really beneficial as well. Okay, additionally, when you're laying the groundwork, again, this is all before you even really get started with writing your resume, you also want to research the organization's culture. So whatever organization it is that you're wanting to apply for, you want to do that research so you can get a feel for, am I going to be happy here at this company or organization? And if I do think this is going to be a good fit for me, then I want to make sure that I can present myself as a good fit to the employer. So there's some different ways that you can research the organization's culture. Of course, you're not going to be expected to be an expert in their culture, right? It's going to be impossible to know all the details of what it's like to work there until you're actually there. But some different ways or strategies that you can use in order to get an idea of a company culture is to take a look at their social media. What types of pictures are on their social media? Are people more laid back? Do they look like they're in a more relaxed environment? Or is it very much business professional where people are wearing suits and the content that they're posting is more serious in nature? So this can give you an overall idea of what the work environment is like by taking a look at social media. Also asking industry experts. So if you know anybody who works in that industry that you are looking to apply for a job within, ask them if they know anything about the company. A lot of times when you're in an industry, it tends to be a pretty small world. So I know certainly for me working in higher ed, I know people who now work at Roosevelt who I used to work with at the last institution I worked at. So it's a small world. When you stay within the same industry, you tend to get to know people who are in different places within the industry. So if you do have some contacts that work within the industry you're looking to get in, ask them to see if what they know about the organization's culture that you would like to apply for. Also taking a look at reviews. These can be Google reviews. They can be reviews on glassdoor.com. If you've ever taken a look at that site, that can provide you with some really helpful information. See what other employees are saying about the company. Now, again, you want to make sure that you're taking this information with a grain of salt, because a lot of times what happens, people tend to post reviews maybe when they have something more negative to say or where they're looking to air their grievances. So you do want to keep reviews that you're finding online in public places, again, taking them with a grain of salt, but they can also provide some helpful information to you to get an idea of what the culture is like and see if you can identify some patterns that are listed within multiple reviews. Last thing is just doing even an image search on Google or a video search. Kind of the same thought process here, but behind looking at their social media. What types of pictures are you seeing? What type of work environment does it look like? Now, again, now things are a little bit different with COVID. Unfortunately, a lot of places have transitioned to remote work and that sort of thing. But again, you can still kind of get a general overall idea of what the culture is like by taking a look at what kind of pictures they're putting out there. All right, so step 2, we want to talk about structuring your actual document. So this is where you're actually getting to start writing your resume. First thing that you want to really remember is that resumes are not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. So even the order that you present the information on your resume can change just depending on the amount of experience you're bringing to the table. For example, if I'm working with a student who went straight from high school and is completing college right after, within 4 years, they're in their early 20s, they have some work experience, but not a ton of professional work experience that's related to their industry. If they're looking for a job, I would most likely suggest that they list their education section before their work experience section, because their degree is more related to the type of position they're looking for than their work experiences. Now, on the flip side, if I'm working with somebody, an alumni, for example, who graduated 10 or 15 years ago, and they have been working in their industry all this time, and they're really just kind of looking to take the next step to move up in their career, in that case, I might suggest listing the work experience section before the education section, because it's been a while since they graduated and they have that recent relevant experience that's directly related to what they're looking to get into. So keep that in mind with resumes. There's not necessarily just a one-size-fits-all approach, and that can even vary too, just for an individual applicant. If you are applying to different types of roles and you have industry experience related to some but not others, then again, you might switch up the order of the sections on your resume to present yourself in a different way depending on the role. So definitely keep that in mind, very important. All right, so we're going to get into now some of the different sections that you can include on your resume. The first, of course, at the very top, you want to list your name and contact information. At the very least, you want to make sure you have your name, phone number, email address. Your full home or mailing address is optional. If you do want to list that on there, that's fine to do. If you're uncomfortable with doing so, that's okay as well, but you still want to list your city and state. So keep that in mind. Also, if you have a LinkedIn profile and you want to include that on your resume, this is where that would go. And I only suggest including the link to your LinkedIn profile if you are comfortable and confident with how your profile looks. You don't necessarily want to advertise that out to employers if you feel like, oh, I have a LinkedIn, but I haven't updated it in a few years. You want to make sure that if you're putting it on there, that you are comfortable with an employer taking a look at it. So keep that in mind when you're listing your contact information. The next section is a professional summary, and this is an optional section. You don't have to include this on your resume, but this is basically a way to introduce yourself to a potential employer. So after an employer were to read this section, they should have a clear understanding of how you're defining or identifying yourself as a candidate in relation to the position that you're looking for. So for example, if you are an accounting student who is looking for an accounting internship right now, you might start your professional summary section by saying, current accounting student with knowledge of ABC and experience in XYZ. And then you can fill in those blanks accordingly based on knowledge that you've gained through your coursework and any related experience or industry experience that you have. So that's just a way to give that brief snapshot to the employer. Again, just giving a solid introduction as to who you are as a candidate in relation to the position you're applying for. It's an optional section. You don't have to include it, but I do think it can be beneficial to include just to give that highlight of your relevant skills and experience right off the bat at the top of your resume. You also, of course, want to list an education section on your resume. There's definitely 4 pieces of information that you're going to include here. That would be school name, the location. Does not have to be the full address, just the city and state is fine. So for Roosevelt, you could list Roosevelt University, Chicago, Illinois, if you're a student at the Chicago campus. Then you want to make sure that you're listing your full degree name. So this is something that's very important that you want to make sure you have accurate. A very common mistake I see a lot of times when I review student resumes is that they don't have an accurate degree name on their resume. For example, they might list that they're getting a Bachelor of Science when they're really in a Bachelor of Arts program. Or sometimes students will list Bachelor of Arts and Science. And typically the bachelor's degree is one or the other, a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. So those are just a couple of examples of some common mistakes I see. But again, really want to make sure that you're listing that accurate degree name. If you're unsure of what your degree program is exactly, you can log into DegreeWorks to look at that, or you can always ask your academic advisor or contact our office for assistance as well. We can look that up for you. Also, you want to list your graduation or your expected graduation if you are a current student. Keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to list this information. For example, if it's been a while since you've graduated and you don't necessarily want to list the date on there, that's fine. However, for current students or recent graduates, we do tend to recommend listing the date on there. Work experience, same type of thing. You want to make sure you're listing those 4 basic pieces of information: the name of the employer, the location, your job title, and your dates of employment. Keep in mind that your work experience can include internships as well. You just want to make sure that you're listing that you were an intern as part of your job title so it's not misleading to the employer. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to write your bullet points describing your positions in a bit here. A skills section, this can be beneficial if you're just, again, looking to get some of those keywords onto your resume, going back to combing through that job posting to see what the employer was looking for, what types of skills were they looking for, what else can you mention on your resume to the employer that might be able to attract their attention. Honors and awards. If you have received any type of recognition, whether it was at Roosevelt, previous school, at a job, scholarships, things like that, any types of honors or awards that you want to highlight to a potential employer, you can certainly include in a separate section. Volunteer experience, this is something that can be really helpful to include if your volunteer experience, of course, is directly related to the types of positions that you're looking for, or if you're just applying for a job with a company who really values that community service or community involvement piece. That's certainly something that can help make you marketable as well. Extracurricular activities, this again tends to be more relevant for current students or recent graduates. So this is definitely important to include especially if you've had any kind of leadership role within athletics or student club or organization. So if you can say you were the vice president of an organization or the treasurer or whatever, team captain, that's going to speak more to the leadership skills and experience that you gained as part of your participation in those activities. So that's definitely something you can include as well. You definitely do not want to include an objective or references section. The reason we don't include objectives on resumes anymore is because an objective really tends to focus more on what you're looking for when you really want to think about your resume as a marketing document, and therefore focusing on information that shows the employer what you have to offer them. So that's why we don't see objectives on resumes or recommend putting objectives on resumes any longer, even though we used to see those all the time. The references section, you do not need to put on your resume because the employer will assume that if you have or if they ask you for references rather, that you will be able to provide them with those. So instead of taking up the space on your resume to include those, just know that the employer will ask you for them if they want them. Now remember, as we're going through our presentation here, if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box. And now I am going to turn it over to Elisa to talk to you about steps 3 and 4.
Alrighty, so step 3 is show, don't tell. So Teresa had mentioned a little bit about this earlier. You want to make sure that you're putting in quantifiable results and achievements. So you really want to focus on what those roles and responsibilities were. You want to think about why and how or any positive outcomes from it. So you want to ask yourself, you know, why did I do this? How the positive results, did anyone benefit from what you did? And what are you ensuring based on that role and responsibility? So there's a quote that was from the book. It says, pretty much anyone can describe himself or herself as a skilled communicator or motivating leader. But if you don't have any real world examples to back that claim up, these words, even if they are true, are virtually meaningless. That's why you want to back up whatever it is that you're putting on your resume with those really specific details. So this is kind of an example of an evolution of bullet point. You know, we have the first one, planned events. Again, you want to really focus on that why, how. So where, planned events on campus. And then why, planned events on campus to increase student involvement. Semester to increase student involvement. And then adding that little extra of results. Planned 5 on-campus events per semester, which resulted in a 10% increase in student involvement. So you can see how we started with, you know, just planned events, but really adding all those extra components of what, why, where, how, and the results is really going to make sure that you have a very solid bullet point description of what your role was. Another thing is your use of action verbs. So you really want to make sure that, you know, hiring managers, they're going to become used to seeing certain words, such as responsible for, led, managed. And when they're reading this, they might just even tune those words out. So you really want to make sure that you're using resigned, streamlined. One way that you can find these words is to look up on Google, just examples of action verbs. We also have a list on our website that has a list of action verbs as well. You also want to make sure that you're avoiding repeating the same verbs. Again, hiring managers are going to get tired of seeing those words over and over again, and also avoiding certain words like helped or assisted. So then we have step number 4, which is polish it up. So you finished your resume, you're feeling happy about it, how it turned out. However, before you send it out, it is very important that you polish it up and make sure that you have caught any mistakes possible. If there are any mistakes, it might not give the hiring manager the best to sell you as a qualified candidate. Are you writing about in the detail? Is it quantified? Did you write about the why, how, what, and the results? Can you add more examples to your bullet points? Fast checking, are the job titles, degree names, and employment dates accurate? You know, you want to make sure that you have all the accurate information on there. Making sure you're proofreading, catching any mistakes in grammar, and commas, periods, and then just the visual appeal overall? Does it look cluttered? Do you have some space? You don't want to have your resume look like it's all just text from one end to the other. You know, you want to leave a little bit of blank space. Is it one page? Titles, the headers, and is the format consistent? So for example, if you, in your education section, if you have the date written on the right side of your resume, then you want to make sure that for your work experience, you're doing the same and have the date on the right side. So making sure that there's a consistency throughout your resume.
And keep in mind, everyone, too, that our office, the Office of Career Development, we do offer career counseling appointments. So just because you're viewing this presentation today, we certainly don't expect you to just kind of walk away from this and feel like, okay, I could do this all by myself and I don't need anybody's help, or, you know, I don't need anybody to look it over. Our office is definitely here to support you, whether this is your first time really having to write a resume, or maybe you've written one before, but it's been a while, or this is your first time actually using your resume to apply for an internship or a full-time position after you graduate. Our office is definitely here to provide you with that one-on-one assistance if you are needing some guidance or advice, or you need somebody to look it over. So definitely keep that in mind about your resume or your cover letter, and certainly anything else job search or career development related. So we are going to go on now from resumes and talk a little bit more about cover letters. Okay, so again, 4 steps here that the book, New Rules of Work, outlines to create your cover letter. And you'll see I have a little note here that says, sorry, you have to write one even if not required. And the reason that I put that up there is because I would say in my years of working in career development, this is probably one of the most frequently asked questions I get from students or alumni that I'm working with is, do I really need to include a cover letter? If the employer doesn't require it, or if they're not asking for one, do I really need to? And the answer is yes. So I will be honest with you, different employers that I've spoken with over the years, some say that they review cover letters all the time. Some say that they never look at them. So that's where people say, well, why should I bother to write it if it might not even get looked at? And the fact of the matter is that even though not employers will read them or review them, the ones who do review them take them pretty seriously, and they can actually really sway the employer one way or another as to whether or not they want to bring you in for an interview or move forward with the whole interview process. So keep that in mind. Even though you might spend some time writing a cover letter, it might not be looked at, but if it is looked at and it's well crafted, it can make all the difference in actually getting to that interview phase. And that's something very important that you want to keep in mind as well, is that when you're submitting your application, you're writing your cover letter, you're writing your resume, the cover letter and resume doesn't necessarily get you the job. The cover letter and resume help you get to the interview phase, so then hopefully you can get that job. So the interview is really where you can sell yourself and move forward with that process. But you really want to use your cover letter and resume, or think about your cover letter and resume as a way to market yourself, to help you get to that interview phase, to help you get that job. So keep that in mind. You definitely want to include that cover letter, even if the employer is not specifically requesting it, because if they do look at it, it can make all the difference in your application. Not everyone is going to take the time to write one, so it can help set you apart in that way. And also, it's another great way to just demonstrate your communication skills to the employer overall. So of course, your cover letter is going to be written in a very different style from your resume. So it's definitely a great way to demonstrate your communication skills. So with that being said, we're going to talk about our 4 steps of creating your cover letter. So step 1, you want to remember all that research. So all that research that we were talking about when we were discussing writing your resume, or those preliminary steps you were taking before you started writing your resume for a position, all that is going to help you with creating your cover letter as well. So when you're writing, you can really make sure that you're using that same tone or language, or just the overall attitude of what you were finding when you were doing research on the culture, or looking over their website, or really combing through that posting with a fine-tooth comb. That's really going to just help you be able to set the tone in how you want to go about writing your cover letter. Another thing you want to make sure that you're doing when you're writing your cover letter is avoiding the generic "to whom it may concern" to start it off. You definitely want to try to find the hiring manager's name if possible, so you can actually just address your cover letter to the specific person it should be going to. Or if not, you can even just make it more personal. So for example, if you're applying for a position where you know you would be reporting to the sales director, then maybe you want to start the cover letter by saying, "Dear sales director." So even though you don't have their name, you're still addressing it to that specific individual person. If you're not able to do that, you can always still say like "Dear hiring manager" or "Dear hiring team." So again, remembering your research, or maybe even doing a little research to see if you can find that hiring manager. Another very common mistake that I see with cover letters that I review from students is that a lot of times it tends to mention the exact same information that's already mentioned in the resume. And this is something that you really want to make sure that you avoid. You don't want to just kind of copy and paste bullet points from your resume and now put it in paragraph form instead. So really remember that your cover letter is an opportunity for you to expand on the information that you're including in your resume. So with your resume, of course, you only have, excuse me, so much room or space to talk about things. Your cover letter can be an opportunity for you to expand on the information you're including in your resume. So while it doesn't necessarily, you want to make sure your cover letter looks like it goes with your resume. So you don't want to be talking about completely different information that's not mentioned, but you can expand or elaborate on the information you're including in your resume already. So if your resume, you're talking about what you did or what you achieved, in your cover letter, you can mention that, but you can also talk about what you learned, how it expanded your knowledge, how it helped you or will help you in the future to be able to make a bigger impact. So that's really, really key. Keep that in mind when you're writing a cover letter. You don't want to just copy and paste the exact same information that's already mentioned in your resume and just put it in paragraph form. And now Elisa will talk to you about the next few steps, or couple steps.
Yes, so with that being said, step number 3 is highlighting the key skills. So look at the job description and your resume. You want to see what are the that you meet or that you have mentioned in your resume. You want to identify at least 2 or 3 skills that you really want to emphasize. So again, not copying everything from your resume and pasting it over to your cover letter, but really finding those really important and to that job that you want to include. What projects, achievements, tests of yours directly related, and how have you demonstrated those skills in the past? Be sure to really explain that in your cover letter. Again, not really just copying and pasting that bullet point, but really giving the detail. And then lastly, I see that a lot of students, for example, they write about why they want the job. However, the employer already knows that you want the job because you're applying for it. So you really want to put a focus on what it is that you have to offer to them. So what are those skills and what are those experiences that you've had that are really going to help in that company? And then step number 4 is to tell your story. So you really want to grab the employer's attention, so you get a higher chance that they will keep reading your cover letter. So what's the story behind the facts? You know, you really want to put your personality out there. Demonstrate your communication skills, you know, by maybe you want to tell them a story of why it is that you became interested in working for that position. So how have your experiences led to this job? If, for example, you've had experience working with kids and babysitting and you really enjoy, you know, that type of work, and you're applying, for example, a teacher position, then you want to write about, you know, that's an experience that led you into becoming interested in that job. And so you want to write about why you're qualified and how you will be good at it as well. Okay, so then these are tips for tailoring your resume. So you want to keep a master resume. And this was kind of covered a little bit before, but you know, every job is different. It has different requirements. So it's really important that you're tailoring your resume for every single position you're applying to, because you want to make sure that you are the best fit for that specific job. This can be challenging and might require a little bit more work, but there's definitely things that you can do to ease that. So put your most relevant experience and information at the top. Focus on transferable skills when you don't have the exact experience that they're looking for. Read a job post and then read your cover letter and resume. Are they mentioning the same key skills and requirements that are on that job post? You want to make sure that you really emphasize those keywords. And then you can also have a friend review them and ask them, you know, can you tell what I'm applying for, what those skills are, what that experience is, does it match that job description? It doesn't even have to be just a friend, you know, you can go to a professor if you would like, and then also, of course, in career development, we can also take a look at, you know, that job description and your cover letter and see if there's maybe anything else that you can add on there that you might have not thought about.
All right, so now we're going to talk about getting referred when possible. This is going to be really important. Again, thinking about ways to network. This doesn't mean that you need to know somebody who's in the actual position to hire you at the company, but do you know anyone who works for the company who might be able to help get your resume into the right person's hands, or be able to refer you or put in a good word for you? So certainly when you are applying for a job, you can start thinking about that ahead of time. Do I know anyone who works for this company offhand? A good way to find that out is to check LinkedIn. So if you, excuse me, have a LinkedIn profile already and you really worked on building your network, again, if that's something that you're not super familiar with or you're not quite sure how to go about doing that, that's certainly something that our office can talk to you about and assist you with. But check LinkedIn. See, do you know anybody who's a first degree connection who works there? Or maybe one of your first degree connections knows somebody who works there. That would make them your second degree connection. Would they be able to help get your resume to the right person? And I will give you an example, a real life example. And if any of you have had a career counseling appointment with me in the past where we've talked about LinkedIn, you've probably already heard me tell this story, because I feel like I've told this story a bunch of times to students before. But it's a great example of the power of networking and how LinkedIn can help you. I had a friend who was looking for a job, and she did a search for the company name on LinkedIn, and she saw that I happened to be connected to a recruiter who worked there. And the recruiter was somebody that I knew from a previous job. We had worked together. So I said, okay, well, let me go ahead and reach out to the recruiter and see if I can just pass your resume directly along to her, or see if I could find out who the individual recruiter for that position she was applying for was. So I did that. I reached out to her, and it turned out that it was a pretty small place. So she was the recruiter for the company, and she said, sure, send me over her resume. And I did that. And my friend was eventually contacted for the interview, and she did end up eventually getting a job offer, and still is working there till this day. And again, that I didn't work any magic. I didn't pull any strings. I didn't get my friend the job. All I did was help get her resume in the right hands. And because the recruiter was somebody who knew me since we had worked together before, she trusted me. She trusted my judgment. She knew I wasn't just going to send over anybody to her. And that helped my friend get to that interview phase. So then she could take over and once again really sell herself and present her experience and skills in a way that showed the employer that she was truly a qualified candidate and a good fit for the role. So this can make all the difference, again, not in getting the job, but getting to that interview phase so that you can then market yourself effectively to the employer and get that job yourself. So anytime that you can get a referral or have somebody be able to pass along your resume, it can definitely make all the difference. There's no guarantees with it, but it can definitely make all the difference. So if you do know somebody or find somebody who would feel comfortable with passing along your resume to the right person or putting in a good word for you, make sure that you send them your resume, and then you can also send them a short summary about yourself as well. So if they do want to pass that along to the contact person of who they're sending the resume to, they kind of have that information to work with that they can incorporate in an email to the hiring manager or recruiter or whoever it is they're sending the resume to. So definitely those referrals can make all the difference when you're applying for a job.
All right, so once you've submitted everything, there's the follow-up part. So you wanna wait at least 1 week before you follow up. If they still don't respond to you after that, you can try again in a week or two after. However, if after that second time you reach out, they don't respond to you at all, just move on. Just because you keep asking them, you know, about your application, it doesn't mean that they're going to put it on the top of their priority list. So it's just better, you know, to focus on other possible applications or any other job opportunities. Also making sure that you're polite. And then you want to stand out by mentioning either news that you might have heard about the company or news about yourself. So for example, if you have achieved anything since you sent your application, you want to tell them about that. You can put, for example, in your subject line, update on cell coordination position, and make sure that you include your name as well on the subject line. And then you can describe whatever that thing that you did that you recently accomplished. And this might, you know, put your resume or your application higher up. And then switch it up, the subject line, time of day you email them, because sometimes they might be busy during the day, and in the afternoon might be a better time to reach them. So having that variety too.
All right, everyone. So that was all the information that we wanted to present to you today. Again, if you do have questions about any of the information that we covered today, resumes, cover letters, follow-up referrals, whatever the case is, please feel free to put those in the chat now, and we will answer any questions that come in. It doesn't look like we have any quite yet, but go ahead and feel free to put those in the chat if you do have some. Again, I want to remind all of you that we do see students for individual one-on-one career counseling appointments. Right now, because of COVID, we are not currently on campus, so we are not meeting with students in person. However, we are meeting with students for appointments either over Zoom or over phone, whatever you prefer. So if you are interested in scheduling a one-on-one counseling appointment to talk about your resume, your cover letter, job search, interviewing, again, anything that is career development related, please feel free to reach out to us. Phone number and our email address is up here on the screen for you. If you are looking to schedule an appointment, if you're leaving a message or sending an email, I always encourage students to just put right in the email what they're looking to talk about, as well as listing maybe a few days or times that are good for them, just to kind of help eliminate the back and forth with the email and getting an appointment scheduled for you. So then we can look to see what times our counseling staff has appointments available. So definitely, if you're interested in a one-on-one appointment to talk about anything career development related, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know if you just have any questions as well. Haven't seen any questions come through the chat. So again, if you do have them, please feel free to write them or type them in. Also, we do want to just let you know, we do have some more workshops coming up this semester. So if you do have questions on upcoming ones, please feel free to reach out to us. Our next one is going to be next week. I believe next Thursday. It's going to be the art of interviewing, and Elisa and Kristen will be presenting. Elisa, do you remember what time that one is offhand?
I don't remember quite the time.
Oh, 3:30. 3:30. Thanks, Kristen.
Yes, thank you.
So yes, so if you are interested in attending that presentation, please feel free to join us. And again, just let us know if you have any questions. So we'll give it another minute or so if anybody has any questions they want to put in the chat. All right, well, if nobody has any questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. So thanks everyone for joining us. And we hope to see you either at a career counseling appointment or at our future workshops. So again, just feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or if there's anything that we can help you with. So thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks everyone and have a great afternoon.